The Bank of Ghana has suspended the foreign exchange trading licenses of Guaranty Trust Bank Ghana Limited and FBNBank Ghana Limited for 1 month, effective March 18, 2024. This move follows various breaches of foreign exchange market regulations, including incidents of fraudulent documentation within their Forex operations. From Accra, Ghana, Patrick Baah Abankwa, financial analyst and investment advisor, joins me. Thank you, Patrick, for joining me today.
Thank you very much for having me today as we celebrate our Independence Day.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Okay. So, I mean, if we get done with this early enough, maybe we'll say a thing or two about that.
Yes, please. That's fine.
Okay. So now looking at the allegations, really, I'm looking at the words, these are weighty allegations. And then the Apex Bank called it breaching of the foreign exchange market regulations. I mean, that's one thing, including incidents of fraudulent documentation within their foreign exchange operations. Now, what more do we need to know about this?
Okay, so I think I will first of all want to spend a few seconds of your time to just mention a few things that the Act says about the licenses that these institutions are giving. So when you look at the Foreign Exchange Act 2006, Act 723, which was passed by the Parliament of Ghana, it says that a business entity that has been licensed in the foreign exchange market is supposed to do 4 things. 1, purchase and sale of foreign currency. 2, receipt and payment of foreign currency. 3, importation and exportation of foreign currency. 4 is lending and borrowing of foreign currency. Now, the allegations that the central bank is making against GTB Bank and FBNBank are issues that have been coming up for the last 6 months or so, which relates to some of the bank practices or staff getting documents from clients to do transfers that sometimes the documents turn out to be fraudulent documents. So that's one. Sometimes when clients receive funds from foreign currency into the home country, they tend to get or provide wrong documents before their accounts are credited. And as a central bank who is always in the process of assessing the books of these banks, as they go through their periodic checks, they sometimes see some of these anomalies, and if the bank is not able to provide documents to back the allegation that is being made against them, then leads to suspension that we have seen, which is affecting, in this case, Guaranty Trust Bank and FBNBank. So these are the classical reasons why, for me, the central bank had to take this step. The issue of fraudulent, for me, is very critical because in the space of banking, what thrives most is the issue of trust. So if we find a bank not going through the process for them to be fined by the central bank and the issue of fraudulent document comes in, then it's something that we need to put our minds to very carefully, for me.
Well, let's talk a bit about, some of these regulations and, why it's important that they adhere to. It's okay to say these are regulations, but it's also important to let people know why these regulations are there, what they protect, what they are supposed to protect. Let's talk about that a bit.
So these regulations are there to, for me, in my honest opinion, to do 2 things. The first one is that they are to strengthen the local currency of the country. So let's say the more people are allowed to transfer the local manufactured dollars or dollars that people got in from exportations out of the country without proper documentation, it weakens the local currency. So, for example, if institutions are using fraudulent documents to transfer dollars outside the country, with time, there will be shortage of dollars in the country, which will lead to depreciation of the local currency, which in this case is the cedi. So that's the first thing that we need to put our minds to. The second thing has to do with anti-money laundering. If transfers that are done or inflows that are received are done without documentation, it puts the country at high risk when it comes to anti-money laundering. And that can lead to Ghana being blacklisted. And when Ghana is blacklisted, it means that companies in Ghana who need to transfer money outside to purchase goods for their businesses will suffer. And that means that the country will not be able to expand. So for me, these are the 2 critical reasons why we need to adhere to the foreign exchange rules and laws in this country. 1, it's to protect the currency of the country, and 2, to also protect the country against being labeled as a country that is not compliant when it comes to anti-money laundering. So documentations are very critical when it comes to assessing the viability of a country.
Well, back to the allegations now. I mean, it's a good thing that the banks we're talking about have their parent companies here in Nigeria. So back to that and what they could portend for the market. One would actually wonder why an institution imbued with so much trust would want to be involved in activities that could affect the integrity of the markets, like you pointed out. Now, how concerning is this? And, what are the possible ramifications? Or is it possible that this was an unintended error? Because when you look at GTBank's, statement, it was saying that it wasn't a willful thing. I mean, is it possible for things like this to go on and then it's not willful? I'm going to tie that to what happened in Nigeria. Sometime earlier in the year, we saw EFCC raid some companies saying it's as a result of Forex allocations. And then my question is, do companies allocate Forex to themselves? That means the banks are involved. It's not the bank is just the commercial banks or even the regulator, which is CBN in our own case here in Nigeria. So I would like you to just speak to all of this, really.
So I think that I've also read the publication from GTBank and FBNBank in terms of their reasons and justification by way of explaining what happened. Most of these banks have units that are in charge of trade and foreign transfers. So these units have staff that have been trained to be able to understand how these things work and also the documentation that they need to be able to provide before transfers are made or inflows are received. Once in a while, you may get some of these documents slipping through because maybe someone did not do his or her work well, or there was some oversight somewhere that led to this document not being provided or the right document being provided. So I would not say perhaps as a bank-wide operation, maybe there was a collusion within the bank. You may have some clients who perhaps will be able to provide documents that at the first glance of it may look genuine, but subsequently you find out that these documents are not as they ought to be. And that's why I think the central bank is there. The central bank is to be the third eye that will look at some of these transactions and bring up the issues, because if the issues are not spotted early and they generate into something bigger, then it can collapse the whole country. So I think that the explanation from GTBank, to a large extent, may make sense because these are individuals, human beings working in these institutions who may sometimes commit errors that will lead to the bank being sanctioned, as we have seen with GTBank and FBNBank. But on the whole, I think that these banks should be very careful in the operations going forward, because when you allow these things to come up one too many, it begins to give a tag to the bank, and the bank will be seen as not compliant in the eyes of the regulator. And as customers of these banks, they will begin to ask questions as to whether the bank is competent enough. When this thing happened yesterday, I have received a number of messages and calls from clients of GTBank and FBNBank who are asking whether if they have a foreign currency account with the bank, they are going to be affected. These are issues that a bank will not want it to be coming to their fore in terms of their customers asking the right questions. So I think that it's a wake-up call for some of these banks for them to begin to put in place the right mechanisms and the right systems to spot every documentation that comes in terms of money coming in or money is going out of their system, because eventually the central bank will come hard on them, as you have seen today. And the more these things are coming up against a particular bank, the more it raises issues of integrity and honesty in terms of their operations.
Well, that's a serious one there, talking about customers. They always want to be sure that their funds are safe. But of course, the CBN has to do its job. Now, a few months ago, I said CBN. Okay, so a few months ago, Ghana's Apex Bank actually barred 8 money transfer organizations from offering remittance services without regulatory approval. Now, it also warned the public and other stakeholders in the banking value chain about dealing with them. However, sometimes when things like this happen, unsuspecting citizens who are probably just innocently carrying out their duties do not clearly understand. Now, do you think enough education or enlightenment is done to let the public understand the importance of these guidelines or even regulations and moves by regulators?
I think in terms of education, there's a big gap when it comes to education. When you go to most of the banks we are referring to, or even most of the commercial banks in Ghana, they have some of these rules clearly pasted in their banking hall for customers to read. But it's not enough to just put something in your banking hall for a customer to read. The banks themselves have a duty in terms of educating their clients through workshops to understand how foreign currency operation works. The central bank itself also has a role to be able to educate the public on how these things work, because if you don't educate people, for example, if you don't educate a customer to know that if I go to a bank to do a transfer, I need document A, B, C, D. And if I provide the wrong document, these are the repercussions that will be on me as a customer and also as the bank. Then people will begin to do things. And when the issues come up by way of sanctions, everybody is taken aback. So, for example, what has happened now, many people do not even understand what it means. So the more we educate people through on the bank level, interaction with their customers, then on the central bank level, also educating through their learning and development portals, I think that will be able to help people to understand how some of these things happen. And the more we educate people, the more people get to understand the operations of the foreign exchange market, then the right rules will be applied. Because if we know that I'm going to provide a wrong document and that can lead to the collapse of a bank, then people will be careful in the kind of information they give out there and also the documents that they give out by way of evidence for inflows that they are receiving or transfer that they need to make for the purchase of items outside.
All right, let's take a critical look at the foreign exchange markets in Ghana. Just before we close, talk to us about the dynamics so far.
So the foreign exchange market in Ghana, I mean, you look at the main dealers, we are the banks themselves. We have the forex bureaus who are also into micro exchange of foreign currency. Then we have what we call the unofficial market, which we call in Ghana black market. I don't know how you call it in Nigeria, but that's people that do the change of dollars and foreign currencies outside the financial system. So they do it in the marketplaces, they do it at certain locations. When you find out that most of these black market people that we are talking about, that is where sometimes chunk of the transfers happen. And when we allow that to happen over time, we realize that they are able to spark speculation in the system. And once they spark speculation, the banks are forced to follow because they have enough of the foreign currency that people need to be able to do the trading. And that's where central bank is very keen in terms of the regulations now. So over the last 1 year or 2 years, a lot of these institutions that are not going by the rules in terms of how much dollars can you sell to your customer, what documents should the customer bring before they get dollars, they are being kept out of the system. And the more central bank goes on to do that, the more it brings a bit of sanity in the financial system. But they now have to look at what can we do to be able to look at the black market, the unofficial market, where some of these deals are still going on without documentation, and it goes on to weaken the currency of the country.
All right, thank you so much, Patrick Baah, Abankwa. Well, we do not have enough time to talk about the independence, but of course, congratulations to you and congratulations to Ghana.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, that's it on this edition of Business Edge. Thank you for watching. I am Perpetua Fasanmi-Peter.